Well, there we have it, guys. The Calcutta Cup for 2023 is now over. The victors go to Scotland in what was an awesome game. I absolutely love this fixture. As a neutral, I get to sit there and just watch two teams absolutely go at it. This one did not disappoint. So many tries to talk about, such an open game, such a tight game. This went completely different to how I think I said in the predictions. I thought this was going to be maybe a low scoring game going through the forwards, quite a tight knit game. It was almost the exact opposite. It was all backs, loads of tries, open free flowing rugby. Fantastic stuff to see. As we do in these match reports, we'll of course be going over the scores, the highlights, the stats, and my thoughts at the end of the first half, what went on there, and then doing the same for the second half to see how we got to that final scoreline, because what a lot to talk about in this game. If you enjoy this style of video, make sure you do like and subscribe to the channel just to keep up to date with all the latest videos, because there's going to be a lot of Six Nations videos going on across the next few weeks. And make sure you drop your thoughts on the game down in the comment section, because I always enjoy hearing what you guys have to say. Starting out then with the first half. I managed to get back just in time for the kickoff to happen with this. I was doing the review video for Wales versus Ireland. You can go check that one out after this one if you want to. And both teams, straight from the kickoff, showing massive intention, high speed. No one's looking to kick the ball out. They're just playing free-flowing rugby. Both teams just going at it, huge intensity. Sort of what I expected to come from England. Scotland were slightly more on the back foot. I expected England to go back a little bit more to what we used to see a couple of years back, where England were always determined to try and score a try within that first 10 minutes, just again and again, barrage of attack. But Scotland defence in that first sort of 10-15 minutes, absolutely fabulous. There were a few mistakes because of the intensity they were playing at, and it became a little bit apparent, and it carried on throughout the rest of the game, to be fair, that England obviously had plans for different things. But as soon as those plans changed because of players' positions, or maybe too many people committed to a ruck, it felt like those mistakes were coming. It felt like England were pushing a bit too hard. Saw a couple of missed passes or just a bit of a loose offload that probably didn't need to happen. Probably could have gone through the phases a bit more. And like I said, both teams just keeping it in play. It's so nice to see open play rugby. First try there didn't come until the 15th minute, actually going to Hugh Jones of Scotland. It was the first Scotland attack of the game, really, in terms of actually having solid possession on the ball. The Scottish backs just opening England up in that defensive line. It sort of happened through a lot of the game. The backs for the Scotland team playing with such an aggressive style, hitting the line, breaking tackles, getting offloads. Fantastic stuff to see. Jones initially got the break that actually made the most amount of room, did get tackled towards the 5-metre line. Scotland managed to recover, spread a ball out wide, and a nice little grubber kick through from Tui Pilotu, managed to be dot down by Hugh Jones, taking Scotland to 7-0 through the boot of Russell, finishing that one off. England had their own opportunity to potentially get a try back. Only 5 minutes later, a penalty coming from Scotland, not rolling away at the ruck time. England decided they were already close enough to the Scotland line. They went for the tap and go. Ellis Genge tried to charge on him. What a great game this one. 17 carries for a prop. Absolutely fantastic to see. Did it just all game that he was on the pitch for it. Tried to take it to the line, but the Scotland defence holding out so well on their own try line. Managed to get shut down by Scotland, and they survived that one. But it was only 2 minutes later when England did finally cross that whitewash through Malins, who had a fantastic first half in this one. The Scotland defence doing really well for the majority of the game. England weren't really making ground just by going through those one-off runners, but every time they were doing it, we noticed that Scotland defence narrowing down a bit, and eventually there was a lovely crossfield kick that came in from Marcus Smith, very barely caught by Max Malins, but good hands to hold on to it. Managed to get down for the try, but the conversion was missed by Farrell. England 5, Scotland 7. Scotland decided they weren't having any of this, and they launched Duhan van der Merwe into what is maybe one of the best tries ever in terms of the Six Nations, in terms of just an individual effort. Absolutely fantastic from him, right from the backfield, running up through towards that halfway line. 6 defenders beaten along the way. 6 is just absolutely monstrous. Going through, hands off, riding tackles, gets himself over for a lovely try. But somehow Finn Russell did actually miss this kick. It felt like quite an easy kick, but it did hit the post and he missed that one. So Scotland only extending it out by a little bit more. England 5, Scotland 12. We had another solid 10 minutes of just intense, fast-playing rugby until we got to the 38th minute when Malins got his second of the game. England using set plays. Like I said before, there seems to be plans. There seems to be things organised, and the set plays were working really well from them, going one way, then passing back inside, changing lines that were obviously pre-designed. They were catching Scotland out on a number of them, and that was what was allowing them to make those big moves. Managed to make big inroads. Again, the Scotland defence narrowed up. They spread it out wide, out to Malins to run it over on his wing. Another conversion missed, though, by Farrell. So at this point, we are just before that half-time whistle. England 10, Scotland 12, but England were the ones who had the final blow. That penalty that came in the 42nd minute. Scotland did feel there was an earlier infringement a couple of phases before, but the referee said no, so they went for the penalty, and Farrell did manage to kick that one successfully. So 13-12. At half-time, a brilliant half. Both teams just absolutely going for it. Nice to see. In terms of the half-time notes, I've just sort of written down that I feel like England were pushing it a bit too much in that opening 20. And in the second 20, it began to feel like they were settling down a bit. They were actually going through the phases, through the plans. They'd organised themselves a bit more. And it seemed to be working for them. Not going for the one extra move, the one extra offload. Just go through what you've got planned. It seemed to be working well for them. Farrell's kicking, letting them down a little bit in terms of that full-time whistle. You know, you've got to be keeping those points ticking along. 4 points can go a long way. And then finally I wrote, Scotland looked good with the ball in hand, but just getting caught out a little bit on that narrow defence. The defence was good and they were absolutely committed to it, but just having to narrow down to try and stop those England runners just left those wings a bit too much room. Half-time stats then. Scotland with 56% possession. There was no stats because ITV are not very good for stats, so I've had to go and take them from online to take them with a slight pinch of salt. But Scotland 56% possession. I have to say, it really felt like England had more possession in that first half, so that was interesting to see. And then penalties, 5 penalties to England and 4 penalties to Scotland. So even in sort of across the park, everything felt rather 50-50 for the majority of that first half. On to the second half then, and of course both teams came out wanting just blood straight from the off. Both teams came out with the same intensity we saw from the start of the game, trying to get on that front foot, trying to get that first points on the board for yourself. Again, came with that intensity, came with the mistakes. We saw a couple of missed throws from the England team. We had a couple of knock-ons from Scotland. Just playing with that higher level intensity, just trying to push it again. A bit too much, just came with its own sort of series of infringements. But the first try did come in the 48th minute, went to Genge. Back-to-back penalties were given away by Scotland. Dornbrandt had a superb line straight through the middle, causing Scotland all sorts of problems. They went off to the one-off runners, and Ellis Genge just been absolutely fantastic throughout this entire game. Got himself over for his try and was successfully converted by Farrell. So England took the lead, 8 points now, 20 points to 12. But a poor restart catch from them put them straight back on the back foot, getting dropped. Bit of miscommunication between the England players. Saw Scotland getting a scrum deep into the England half, allowing them to have their own opportunity. Scrum was a little bit shaky. Scotland passed it out wide, went through a couple of rucks. Ball bobbled out the back of a ruck. Ben White picked it up and suddenly found himself on a mid-spin. We see Ben Curry missing the tackle. He sees a bunch of room and we see Ben White go over his try. 51st minute, was also successfully converted by Russell. But I was so happy to see Ben White get a try. As I said in the preview video for this match, I really feel like that lad should be starting for Scotland. I think he's got such a nice energy about him in terms of the speed, the way he's just always looking to go himself. And that's exactly what you want to see him do. Pulled them back to within a point now, 20 points to 19. Over the next 15 minutes then, both teams sort of took turns, sort of taking charge. Both teams had little cracks that were beginning to show. England's cracks were more to do with like the line outs, not really going to hand, looking a bit shaky, not collected very well and sort of putting it back. They still had a high percentage of their own line outs won, but just the manner they were doing wasn't really working from them. Scotland themselves had some really nice breaks. We saw Kyle Steyn break down the right wing alongside Stuart Hogg. And if you were 2 men with a speed like that, a try was going to come. The ball out wide to Hogg, tried to pass it back into Kyle Steyn, threw the ball behind him, forcing the knock on. Absolutely a try scoring opportunity going begging there. England with the next one to go on the scoreboard. Matt Fagerson, hands in the ruck, a bit of an unnecessary penalty just in range for Farrell, and he slotted that one through, taking England to 23 points to 19, only for Scotland to hit back straight away. This is such a good game. It was so back and forth between the two teams, so nice to see. This one was for Itoje being offside, and that penalty was also successfully converted by Russell, taking it to 23 points to 22 with only 10 minutes left on the board. Really coming down to the line. One team needed someone to step up, and it came in the form of Duhan van der Merwe for Scotland. At this point, the subs have mainly come on. England's subs didn't really seem to have the same impact the Scotland subs were having. It felt like Scotland were coming onto the pitch and adding intensity, whereas it felt like the England subs were coming on, slowing down the game a bit. Ben Youngs had come on for Port Vliet at this time. And I feel like that was maybe the wrong decision. The game felt like the ball was getting out of the ruck so much slower. A lot of the other England subs finding themselves a bit out of position. Like I said earlier on about the set plays, they had set plays that were working for them. And as soon as players weren't in position for those set plays, they looked a little bit lost. Marcus Smith desperately trying to run the show, pointing people where to go in terms of attack and defence. And one of the other things, kicking it away. And this try that came from Duan van der Merwe, straight off the back of that, kicking possession back over to Scotland, who decided to run it back up the field. Going through a number of phases, managing to make good ground. The ball shifted wide, and it was just another amazing try out to Duan van der Merwe. 3 defenders beaten this time, smashing his way over, getting himself his second try of the game, and also converted by Russell. Taking us to that 29-23 final score in terms of that final whistle, but England had one more opportunity in this. They had a penalty in the 79th minute. They kicked it to corner, going for that driving maul. Again, the line-out seemed a little bit wobbly. It was a bit slow to form into the maul. The Scottish forwards had just come on from the bench, making a huge impact, driving a 6-metre maul back to about 10 metres away from the try line. England tried to get it out, but there was a superb jackal penalty coming in from Jamie Ritchie, managing to seal out the game, and Scotland kick it off the park for what I believe is meant to be a historic win. I can't say I'm superbly knowledgeable on my history of Calcutta Cups, but apparently this is the first time ever that they've won 3 in a row in terms of at Twickenham. So that's a big result for them. Scotland very happy, but it has messed up my prediction video. For anyone who checked out that one, I was expecting it to happen at some point, maybe not the second game in, but hey, Scotland managed to do really well in this one. In terms of final notes then, I just wrote down what a fantastic game that was, especially as a neutral such as myself. Hopefully supporters from both sides also got to enjoy this game. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. The Scottish backs, absolutely brilliant and felt confident all game. This is one of the things we were talking about when the Scottish squad was announced. How good the Scottish team actually is. The number of talented players in there, and it's really surprising they don't have more wins under the belt. And when they play with intensity, aggression and confidence, you see these tries coming in. I really hope we get to see it more from Scotland. And then England looked good when the plan was going to plan, but as soon as players not in position or out of moves for set plays, they did look a little bit lost, and it seemed to just drop back to going for the one-off runners and hoping they did something, or kicking possession away and hoping someone got there. In terms of number of mistakes made, I actually feel like Scotland felt like they made more mistakes in these games, but Scotland were able to capitalise more on England's mistakes over the game. That's sort of what led to it. And then just as a final note, Ben Youngs slowing down the game. I still maintain Portfleet should have stayed on the pitch for a little bit longer. I think he was doing so well in terms of getting England moving on that front foot. Ben Youngs really slowing down England, and it just led to one-off runners. I think it could have worked better to have kept him on for a little bit longer in the game. Man of the match went to Duan van der Merwe. Of course it did. That man's going to be in some highlight reels this year. You can already see it coming. Kind of wish I hadn't dropped him from my fantasy team for anyone playing the Super Brew. Did that about midnight last night. So that's come back to bite me as well. And then in terms of some final stats and possession, 53% to Scotland, not really dropping down that much from that first half. Number of penalties, 11 to England, 9 to Scotland, so not as many as we saw in that Wales-Ireland game, but they'll probably still want to both be keeping it a little bit below that 10 marker. And then finally, turnovers. England got 5 turnovers in that game compared to Scotland's 2, but what opportunities for those 2 to have made such a big impact, especially that one at the end from Jamie Ritchie to seal out the game for Scotland. So congratulations to Scotland. If you enjoyed this one today, remember to leave it a like. Of course, we have Italy versus France tomorrow, so come back to check out the match report after that game is over as well. I hope you've all enjoyed this one today, guys. I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.